here. There we go. All right, guys. Welcome back to the Ryan Helm podcast. Today we have got someone who's big time. We have Dr. Robb Kelly. He has a PhD in psychology at Oxford University. He also has a PhD in psychology and behavioral science at the University of Hampton. National Certified Recovery Coach, Level 1. He's also a somatic experience practitioner, certified NLP practitioner, a certified life coach, certified brain spotting practitioner, certified in international interventionist, and he's a published author and speaker with his own podcast as well. Like I said, Dr. Robb Kelly, how are you doing, sir?
Excellent, my man. Good to see you, Ryan. Good to be here, man.
Good to see you. Good to be seeing. So you are a addiction specialist, recovery specialist. I was just listening for the second time to your last thing that you did on gateway to addiction, trauma, which is kind of how we found each other and kind of why we linked up, because I do my best to understand trauma, and it is the deep-seated root of so many issues. But before we get into that, you have a little bit, and I'm sure you've told it many times, and you can do the condensed version if you want, but you're, well, one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to talk to you is because there's a lot of recovery coaches, certified this, certified that, but they have fancy degrees and fancy whatnot. And what they lack, which is they lack weight and depth, right? And so that's why the whole reason I'm trying to do this podcast is to be able to give weight and depth to those who don't want to, the certifications, the fancy clothes, that doesn't mean shit to them. They need people with weight and depth, and you absolutely have fucking weight and depth. You got some skin in the game. So tell us a little bit briefly about your background.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Into this.
I'm a chronic alcoholic. I've been sober a few days now, as they say. Born in Manchester, United Kingdom. I'm actually an addiction psychologist and an addiction behavioral scientist. That's my titles. The rest of the stuff we need to use when we go out of state, so we need to do the coaching thing. So that's my job. I kind of rewire the brain using neuroscience. I specialize in neuroplasticity, which is the redirection of neural pathways, which are thought patterns, away from the bad neural pathways, which are self-sabotage. Self-sabotage comes from trauma, and trauma comes from past behavior, learned behavior, and enmeshment from parents or caregivers. So we found a way to clear trauma up and to redirect away from any addiction. We have a 97% success rate. The standard is 5%. We only take on 4 patients at any one time, and we have 4 offices around the world. So we kind of unlock that mystery. So trauma is the gateway drug. That's just the bottom line. It's not alcohol, it's not marijuana, it's trauma is the gateway drug. I'll take on anywhere with that, with the research we've done. So we've done research over 30 years with 7,500 patients. And it comes down to the trauma. Alcohol and drugs are just a symptom. So when I tell everybody that alcohol has 1% to do with alcoholism and the same with drug addiction, then it kind of freaks them out. But that's the case. It's a self-sabotage movement. The other thing I want to point out is the alcoholic brain and any other brain, including the drug addicted brain, is different. Alcoholics are born, drug addicts are made. Alcoholics have a predisposition, and we are allergic to the ethanol in alcohol. So drug addicts don't have the allergy like alcoholics do. It may skip a generation or 2, but it's there. Every alcoholic, the real alcoholic, can trace back alcoholism in the family. And if you can't, you are probably an alcohol abuser. So to the normal eye, they look the same, but they are very, very different indeed.
What are some of those differences? Because I've heard you talking about that. What was it, full-blown alcoholic versus just a heavy alcohol user, and then there's steps that you'll take. What's the main differences between those two?
Well, one is born, and the other one is born maybe with the addictive personality. So people can abuse alcohol, and look like an alcoholic. Drink, benders, out for a week, coming back, and then when you look at the alcoholic brain, from the very first drink, you are done. You will always end up in hospital, dead, or locked up in jail. That's just the way it is. You can't control the alcoholic brain when it comes to alcohol. We can't control it. And here's why we can't control it. There's two parts of the brain that are different to the normal person. My hypothalamus, which is and this is layman's terms, guys. I could go on for an hour about the hypothalamus, but just let me do layman's terms for you. Hypothalamus controls the fight or flight part of the brain. Whether to run, whether to stay, blah, blah, blah. It also teaches us, it's a natural teaching mechanism of how to survive. So it tells normal people and me at the beginning to drink water and eat food to survive. That's why we never have to teach a baby that it needs to eat or drink. It'll have its hand down its mouth or it'll cry because its tummy is aching for food or water. During, and we don't know when, during that journey sometime into full-blown alcoholism, remember we're born, abusers don't have this, then the hypothalamus switches. Now it tells the real alcoholic to drink alcohol. That's why alcoholics, whilst drinking and in that alcoholism state, chronic, can go days or weeks without water or food. So the hypothalamus is telling me to drink 24 hours a day. So once that hypothalamus says, yes, let's go, it flips over to my prefrontal cortex, which only has one job in the world, well, one major job in the world, and that's to come up with a solution to my problem. But if my hypothalamus, part of the brain, is telling my other part of the brain to drink alcohol, that's what I'm going to do. The other part of the brain that's different to anybody else's, including drug addicts, is the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia is my repetition, strengthen, confirms part of the brain. So the more I do something, the quicker I'll learn. Like most people, the only problem is my basal ganglia has a defect in it. And that defect is to self-sabotage. So I might look pretty good, you know, I get the job back, I get the kids back, I get the wife back, the car's looking good, we got the house back, blah, 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 and then bang, I'll self-sabotage. And the crazy thing is, nobody knows why we do that. You can ask any alcoholic, why did you relapse? And they will give you 1,000 excuses, but they can't think of one reason. And that's kind of the difference between the both. It's very controversial, but that's the truth. That's the bottom line. And I you know, well, what do you know? Well, I kind of know a lot, really. One, because I'm a chronic alcoholic who ended up homeless and lost his kids, still never see my youngest kid. Studied at Oxford, studied at Southampton, 26 years of schools and colleges just on alcoholism and addiction, studying the brain, neuroscience, and trials, tests, and research for all them years as well. So our research is groundbreaking. Our research probably will come out 2023. But yeah, we're really, really in depth with this. We don't want to know about normal psychology. We're not into that. We want to know why my brain is different, why I couldn't stop, why I stabbed my wife 3 times one night because she wouldn't let me finish my bottle of vodka. That's not normal, Ryan. You know, and all this stuff. And that's what we've done. We've studied. We're passionate about what we do. And all my staff are recovered alcoholics or recovered addicts. So that was a long answer, Ryan, to the question, but I hope I answered it correctly.
Absolutely. I loved it. I loved it. One thing that I found fascinating, I'm not sure if it's an actual correlation, but when you were telling the story about the girl that
Yes.
they found in the box, right? And so for those who don't know, it's a long story. It's a brief story where a girl was kidnapped. Well, if you want to tell the story real quick, and then I'll elaborate on my question afterwards about that.
So there was a girl back in the day, probably late 70s, early 80s, snatched off the side of the road in Manchester, England. Blue-eyed, blonde-haired, 16, 17-year-old girl. So obviously the media was crazy for this back in the day. And they sent search parties out. All the police officers were looking and they couldn't find her. So as the weeks and months went on, they pulled back on looking for her and just had one person on the cold case file. So she was kind of never going to be found. About 8 or 9 months later, a policeman in a police car was following another car down the road of a side road out in the country, and it had a broken signal light, or if you're in the UK, indicator. So he pulled him over, and in the UK back then, you can search the car, no warrant needed, no permission. So they searched the car. One of the greatest things with the police back in the day, one of the techniques they used to use just in case it was stolen, because you couldn't check there and then if it was stolen, they would ask you what's in the trunk, what's in the boot. And if you saw a pair of shoes, you know, a ball and a hula hoop, and they'd open it and that exactly what was in the boot, then obviously it's your car, they'd let you go. And this guy, you know, he said, "Oh, I've got such and such a thing." And they opened the trunk, and there was plenty of stuff, but also come across a stolen screwdriver, which still had the tag on it and no receipt. So then you were allowed to go back to the house and check if there's anything else. And surely they did. And they found lawnmowers and drills that he'd been stealing over the years. And also they found a long box, probably about, I don't know, I forget the size, probably 12 foot wide by 4 foot high. And they knew there was more stolen stuff. So he didn't have a key, so he smashed the lock off, and there was the girl that went missing off the streets 9 months ago. She was alive, she was bruised and battered. He used to get her out every day, he used to abuse her, he used to give her food, the restroom, and then back in the box. Did that for 9 months. So when the police officers came in, the police woman leant over, took her by the hand, helped her out of the box and put a coat around her. Question is, what's the first thing she did? And the answer to that is she got back in the box.
She got back in the fucking box. And that's because of the conditioning and trauma, correct? Essentially?
Exactly. Most times, so when you look at that and you look at, well, that's got nothing to do with my life. Well, it has. Every person listening. Because we stay in relationships far more than we should. We allow people to talk down to us far more than we should. We don't think we go for that job because we're not good enough. We're not tall enough, slim enough, blonde enough, or rich enough. All the time. We go back to the trauma, learned behavior as a child. So if you were telling you a piece of crap all the time, then you go back to that comfort blanket. And for, even though it was a horrific time of her life, that was a learned behavior. So if I put it into layman terms real quick, if you've ever been on an outing with a bunch of guys or girls or whatever, you get a bus there, you hire a bus and you go, and you have a great day out and you come back to the bus, what seat do you sit in? You sit in the same seat that you came in. So that's human behavior to repeat what we've been doing, basal ganglia again, because we think we're comforted. Many people who suffer from alcoholism and addiction need drama around their life. Because when you trace back to their caregivers, you'll find that there's alcoholism in the family, so there was chaos in the house and there was drama every single day. Shouting, screaming, beating, fighting, whatever it is by caregivers. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, sorry, over a period of years, that becomes your norm. So say the girl grows up into her teens, 17, 18, 19, 20, for instance, she will attract that guy who ends up abusing alcohol and beating her because that's what dad did, or uncle, caregivers again, in front of her. So that becomes the norm. When it's peaceful and quiet, we feel very, very uncomfortable.
Right, right. Ain't that some shit? And, well, with that return to the girl returning back to the box, you know, going back to the abusive relationship, and me studying things about survival brain versus learning brain, it's that complete the going back. So like I learned one thing I learned about the survival brain is that there's always a safe place. They always look for a safe place.
Yeah.
And I found myself, you know, I was in a 17-year marriage, and the last 10 years of it, I found myself at night sitting in the car and drinking all the time. Yeah. And then it became a safe place. And then, you know, we split up, and I'm in a different house, and life is better. And I'm like, I keep trying to go back to the car.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got so much shit to do. I don't want to go back to that fucking car. Why do we keep going back to the car? Oh, survival brain. And essentially, would you say that's the same? It's in the same context. The way they try to find a safe place is the girl going back to the box.
100%. 100%. That's what we do. It's a safe place. It's a learned place that while you're in that box, you feel so safe because you're in that box that you don't know what else to do. See, if I sat here every day and told you you're a piece of shit for like 6 months, you will believe that you're a piece of shit. And that's what happens with caregivers, unfortunately, from our childhoods, is they teach us to go to a place to be safe, learn behavior and survival instincts, going back to the hypothalamus, get somewhere away from the problem into a quiet, safe place. And we will return. So it's all learned behavior somewhere along your life, whether it'll be, you know, the girl who was with or parents, that behavior was taught. And not only was it taught, it becomes like a rapid disease that covers anybody. So let me explain. We did a test once. We got a huge mason jar for those guys. If you're listening abroad, because I know most of my guys are from England, it's kind of a large jam jar. with the screw cap on top. So it was pretty fat and pretty big. And what we did is we put 1,000 fleas in there. Okay. Now, as we know, fleas can jump up to 3 feet. So we put them on in here because we've heard of this test before. And we left the cap on. Obviously, it was aerated, so they could breathe. So we left it on for 3 days. Okay. These are the fleas that can jump at least 3 feet, remember? So from the bottom of the jar to the top was about 12 inches. So we took the top off after 3 days. Not one flea jumped outside where the lid used to be. Learned behavior. Not one flea jumped out of the jar because of learned behavior, even though the cap was off. That's interesting enough, but let me go on further. What we found is when they had babies inside that mason jar, the babies wouldn't jump higher than where the lid was. So that kind of sums up why we do crazy stuff, why we run to certain places, why we stay in relationships, why we try and change the other person. I mean, and he's horrible, but I think it can change him. You'll never change somebody. It's impossible to do that, especially in a marriage.
Right. Learned that one the hard way.
Yeah, me too.
So that generational with the fleas, the learned behavior, it kind of reminds me of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure it has something to do with it as well, at least to elaborate on it, and that's the learned behavior, but also the generational trauma, which I've heard some semi-recent research come out that apparently trauma can live about 7 generations within our DNA.
Yes, definitely.
So
definitely 7. And it's passed down and passed down. So if you can imagine, great-grandfather used to be horrible to grandfather, that was horrible to dad, that was horrible to you, then you have the chance with the latest technology and research on trauma, you have the chance to break that to your children. So there's a great animation somewhere, and it's got a whip, great grandfather's whipping the grandfather who's whipping dad, who's whipping you. And then when it comes to you, you're sat down with a child coloring in on a board, as in different behavior, loving behavior. And that's how we break the chain, because there's no handbook. And by the way, there's no one to blame here. You can't, well, my parents said, no, stop it. It's learned behavior. Get back in the box. You don't know anything else. Right. No handbook with children. Hey, this is how you should. I'll tell you something we found, especially with the alcoholic families and brain, is anything less than nurturing as a child is child abuse. Alcoholics hear things different, because that fight or flight mode, we're always on flight or fight. We're going to run away as quick as we can. It's a level that we don't come off unless we get treatment. Central nervous system is also affected. So me and my brother, for instance, stood on the kitchen table, and my mom walks in, and she says to both of us, "Will you get down off that table, you stupid idiots? Get down!" My brother jumps off laughing, and I freeze. And one of the reasons I've frozen is because what I heard, "Get down off that table, you stupid idiot!" I freeze. That's the alcoholic brain. That's how very sensitive we are to stuff. So growing up, trauma for me, one of the biggest lines that I was told by a caregiver that affected my life even to this day is, how many times have I told you, you can't go to college like your brother, you're not clever enough. Now, if you said that to the next door neighbor, he'd probably laugh and go, "Yeah, you're right, Mom, but I'm going to try and prove you wrong." I didn't. I kept hold of that self-sabotaging sentence, and I sabotaged every single time I could with that. And it took me a long time to break through. In fact, 50 years old is when I actually broke through and got rid of that chain and decided that once you do the work, especially with us, you can do anything you want in life. Anything you want. And I always used to get people in America, "Well, I can't be president of the United States." Listen, despite your political views, we had a business around the country. Don't dare tell me you can't do anything that you put your mind to, because you can. It's been proven time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. And listening to a few of your lectures, rather, I see some striking similarities between survival brain and the alcoholic mind, as you put it. And especially when you just speak about how your parent, your mom, come in, get down off the table, and you feel something completely different, and I doing my best to recover from survival brain. When I heard you say that a couple of weeks ago about how everything sounds different to an alcoholic, I just started like almost doing like a walking meditation, really thinking about that. I mean, and like it doesn't matter what it was, but the other day I heard something, someone said something to just like a friend, and I thought they said one thing, doesn't matter what they said and the way they said it. And it was not at all what they said. And I got into almost full blown defense mode. And they're looking at me like, hey, jackass, what's your problem? It doesn't matter what was said. And I sat there for a week and studied what the fuck did I just do? And it's just that survival slash alcoholic brain. It's in defense, always
Always.
fucking looking around your back, everything. That fucking trauma, man. It just gets up in you,
That's what
distorts
kills.
your whole world.
Yeah, that's what kills us. Alcoholic or not, but alcoholics and addicts, they have different ways of accepting any kind of criticism. I spoke at a place once in California. There was 1,000 people there. I know there was 1,000 because they clicked in through and clickers because of the fire marshal. After the meeting, they told me categorically to put 2 hours aside because everybody usually shakes your hand and says thank you. It's what they do in this club. I said, fine. 999 people said I was blown away by what was said and how they made the day and thank you and da. One person came up, he said, you were too loud, you cursed too much and you were shit, and walked off. Have a guess who I concentrated on for the next couple of years and almost relapsed? The guy that says. So then you have to make sure that your own work is done. You need to go back to trauma. You need to uncover, discover, discard of the stuff. Otherwise, you will always be ruled by trauma. And people who are ruled by trauma die early, believe me.
Right. Yeah. It is it's brutal and it's deeper than people want to. Well, people like me at least like the way I used to be. Big tough guy, you think you're strong, and no, I got through this shit. It's like, no, dude, no, you haven't. You need to talk to someone. You need to speak about it and do some deep internal shadow work too. And that's what a lot of people don't really know how to do. And that's part of the reason why I love your work too. Like I said, you've clearly done the work and you help people do the work. And like I said, also you've got weight and depth. Listening to some of your backstories, a lot of people probably don't know, like you were homeless for a while, and not only were you homeless, you were, I don't know how you say it, but you were fighting for money, literally fighting for money just to get through and through. So you've been through the ringer, and I tip my hat to you, sir. It's been awesome listening to your journey and everything, and the work that you do. More importantly, to help people.
I think that it becomes a passion. And that's what people can't understand is like, if anybody relapses whilst on my program, I take it very seriously. I'm up for days, and he usually finds out they've done something wrong or haven't done this at all. But when you live on the streets, when you have to fight every day to stay alive, I woke up one morning and the guy next to me had been stabbed to death for his sneakers, for his training shoes. When you're in that environment, in the roughest part of England, Moss Side and then Piccadilly Gardens, you have to fight, literally. And I would steal, or I would, fight for money, bare knuckle fighting, or I would do whatever it was to survive. So when you've gone down to that depth, I mean, I didn't obviously commit suicide 7 times, and on 2 occasions it worked. My heart stopped. They brought me back to life. But when you live at that depth, first of all, you adapt to it. Okay, after a couple of weeks or months, you start adapting to what your life is now. But there's also something that carries with you, and that is, if I ever get out of this shit, I'm going to spend the rest of my life studying why I got here. How it all went wrong for me and how I lost my kids and the torment and the heartache from that. So I love, most people think, we're an addiction company. We're more than that. We help put families back together, number one. That's what we do. And we give people better lives. 50% of my patients right now are non-alcoholic or addict, but they have trauma and they want to succeed in life. But we find out the trauma stops them from succeeding because at the end of the day, some voice in their head, internal dialogue, will tell them that they're not good enough, or you're an imposter, or you're so lucky to be here. And it's bullshit. There's no different from the person who's working a job for 40,000 and the CEO is working a job for 250,000. There's no difference, because the only one difference is that he believed he could. So in 2022, as we look today, with the scientific research and the technology that we have to earn more money, the only person that's stopping you from having that amazing life is you. Don't get stuck in the past. Well, this is the way marriage is supposed to be. Says fucking who? I don't like them rules. Let's change it. Well, this is a job for life. Fuck off. There's no such thing as that. Change it. You don't like your wife, get a new wife. You don't like your job, get a new job. Well, it really isn't that simple, Doctor. Yeah, it fucking is.
Right.
That's simple. Most people, you know, I went to bed last night, Ryan. I was 19. I woke up this morning, I'm 61. Where the fuck did that time go? And that's one of our biggest things today is, look, I'm 61. I'm not getting any younger. I want to pass this information on that I've learned. I want to teach young people, like, listen, this life goes very, very quickly. Why wouldn't you go for what you really want rather than stuck in the pain of everyday shit that you hate? How many people out there Sunday evening, oh God, I've got work tomorrow. I built a company where people on Sunday night go, God, I can't wait to get in tomorrow. Wonder what that crazy fucker's going to do tomorrow. That's me. Going to do tomorrow to make somebody's day. It's like, this is living. If you're doing anything else, change it. You know, you can't. Neuroplasticity says we can remold and change the brain. With alcoholics and addicts, and my normal people, 10 times more, I guess. You can change things. Don't get stuck in that old way. Oh, yeah, well, you can't do that because, you know, our families that, fuck that.
Right.
Just making the rules up. Make it up. Me and my wife, when we got married 8 years ago, we make our own rules up. Because that's what she said to me one day, a few days after getting married. We had a little argument. He said, well, that's the way marriage is supposed to be. And I said, says who? Right. I don't like it. So we made our own rules up. And we made our own company up. And we make our own friends up. You know, and we give freely and we enjoy life. I compliment 3 people every day. This is getting over trauma. And just personally, I give someone financially when I leave the house. Whether it be $500 or 50 grand, I don't know. We've done that a lot. We give away over 100 grand last year to people who are in recovery, one parent family who want the kids back, who wants the day in court, whatever it is. We're backing them guys all the time, you know, ex-patients of ours all the time, because you will not know what life's all about until you start giving, and freely of your time or whatever, compliments. So the guys that are going, don't know too much, you might be wrong with that one. Do this. Next time you're in an area with a lot of people, pick one person out. And sneakers are always the best to pick out, because I'll show you why. So pick somebody out coming towards you and go, hey man, that's great sneakers. And he'll go, oh, thanks man, and carry on. Turn around and watch him. He's going to look down at them sneakers at least 2 times. You've just made his day. Dopamine's released in my brain when I compliment people. I'll say thank you. And it's released in his brain. So it's a win-win situation. See, what a lot of people don't know out there is there's 4 chemicals every day that you need to be happy. One of them is endorphins. Get to the gym, move around for 20 minutes, go for a walk with the dog. There's your first chemical. Dopamine, what we just talked about, compliment people. It's the reward system, the pleasure. We love that shit. It's a natural hormone. Serotonin, get out, get some sunlight, go mix with a few people, you know, social belonging. And the 4th one is oxytocin, which is the bonding, the cuddling, the intimacy with a friend, girlfriend, mom, whatever it is, sit down and be intimate for a bit. When them 4 chemicals are mixing it within everything else in the brain, then it's impossible to have a bad day.
Right. You said something on the last the Gateway to Addiction speech where blew my mind. I don't know what the science about this or not, but you were talking about how oxygen, how we don't use enough oxygen, which gets into breath work, which I'm all about, but how cancer can't really get through or can't flourish without proper oxygen. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, or to speak on that together?
Yeah, we've done a little research. Gary Brecker is one I have to give kudos to for this. He's a biohacker. He taught me this, and we went through it together. So we only get 25% of our lung capacity moving every single day. It's only 25% moving. 25%. Okay, try this. Okay, so all the diseases, the cancers, and everything else in the body flourishes when oxygen is not present. Flourishes. When oxygen is present in the body, because we all live in the hypoxic state. We all suffer from hypoxia, which is lack of oxygen. When oxygen is present, no diseases, cancers, ailments can grow any further than they are. So if I get cancer and don't know about it, but my date for die, let's say for instance, is in 4 or 5 years' time, if I use the breathing technique that we get our guys to do every morning, you will add another 4 or 5 years onto your life, at least onto your life. Brain is not getting the oxygen. The cells are not getting the oxygen. The molecules are not getting the oxygen. They all need oxygen to survive and better peak. Why do you think we have oxygen tanks? You know, why do you think all athletes use them stuff? Why do we see this oxygen coming in? So what I do every day is I get my patient 3 times a day is ideal, where you take in breath like this. You really have to exaggerate. Do it 10 times, you'll go dizzy. I also use these. It's oxygen tank, a little thing from Amazon that I use, but you will find yourself thinking clearer, acting clearer, being happy, being more motivated, getting out there doing stuff because you have the oxygen circulating around at 100% rather than 25.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that just reinforces what I've been talking about, guys, that go to the gym, get your physical work, get that serotonin going, have gratitude, do your breath work and meditations. It's the ancients had it right, man.
Yes.
The ancients had it right a long time before we fucked everything up with technology.
Yeah, but look at the gut feeling, for instance. People don't use it today. The gut feeling is real. It goes back to the tribal days. And one of the tribesmen would get that gut feeling where the body's saying there's danger near. They would either get ready to fight or they'd move camp, whichever. But that gut feeling is real every single time. Should have followed my gut feeling. I hear people say that all the time. It's that the first gut feeling, whatever it is usually the right choice to make.
Right. That reminds me too of the deer story about when the deer gets, I'll let you tell it because you do it much better, but my question before I forget though, after you tell the story is, I've heard of that shaking, I forget what it's called. There's like a few people that have talked about how doing ecstatic dancing, which is essentially the same thing, how it helps shake off the trauma. So if you want to tell the deer thing and then get into that, I love that story. I love that fucking story.
So we look at trauma as a whole, and we understand that trauma can kill us and trauma can affect every single avenue of our life, period. We all know that's common knowledge. What a lot of people don't know is how we deal with trauma. They have, not me, sorry. They have only done tests on a deer, I think, because it's just the most knowledgeable and it's a viewing thing you can actually see, you know, is that we stuff trauma down. When something happens, we go quiet, we go back to our quiet place, we take it in, it hurts. Now, trauma might be an insult or something we hear, or it could be a car crash, or it could be parents leaving, or it could be somebody missing your birthday. It's all trauma when it comes to the addicted brain. But we stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down. And then eventually what happens is that explodes. So let's say you got a zip file on your laptop or your screen, everything you don't want to deal with now, you stick it in there, videos, files, everything, paperwork, just stick it in there for a bit. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. What you say you're going to do tomorrow, only 70% of things happen tomorrow when you say it. So we'll stick it on that file. Then one day I come to work and I'm bored, click on that file, and all this stuff comes out at once, and it's too overwhelming. It's the same thing with the body and trauma, especially the central nervous system, is we keep stuffing it away. So if you watch a deer, if you happen to watch a deer getting hit by a car but doesn't die, what happens to that deer is it'll lay motionless for a couple of seconds, and then it'll jump up. And then what happens next is very interesting. The deer will shake violently for a couple of seconds, and it runs on its way. Now, the trauma is released during that shaking violently. That same deer on the same road at the same time with the same car, if it all lined up, would cross that road again and get hit again because the trauma's gone. It doesn't remember the trauma. You know, I mean, the chance of doing that is billions to one, obviously, but just to explain it, that we don't do that. So we need to uncover, discover, discard a trauma when it happens, not months and stick it away. Because there's a great book out there. I think it's called The Body Keeps Score. one of the books that we ask our patients to read. And it's like the body keeps score of all this stuff, man. And if you don't sort it out, and then you got to look at, well, most trauma sits in my subconscious brain, so I can't think what it is. You know, what do you? So we learn to use brain spotting, and we learn to use somatic experience and NLP and, you know, normal psychology and stuff like this to pour this stuff out. So brain spotting is a direct link going back into the subconscious brain. So most people think that the eyes is an optical nerve, but back of the eye goes into the brain. The eyes are actually part of the brain. Not a lot of people know that. It's the bulging part of the brain, and what just happens, what we see through, but it's part of the brain. So when you go through the pupil straight into the subconscious brain, you can pull stuff out of that person. And it's all about eye flicker. When trauma is present in the thought patterns or memory, the pupils will flick for a second. That's where the trauma lies. It could be over 10 minutes, an hour, 5, it doesn't make any difference. But you pull that out, and then all of a sudden, one of them traumas, hopefully all of them, will hit something that will trigger that response to come into the prefrontal cortex. And that's when we start to get rid of that. So we go back to the scene of the crime and we clear that stuff up. Like I said, it might take one session, it might take 100 sessions, depending on how much trauma you've had in the past. Every single person suffers from trauma these days, every single person. And it won't come out like you think it does.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never been in a car crash, a plane crash, or nothing like that. It's got nothing to do with that. You know, one of the reasons you keep dating that same guy who ends up being an alcoholic and beats you every day is because, you know, I have 70-something pair of sneakers. I don't know why until my therapist a couple of years ago told me. I used to walk to school in shoes that had holes in and socks that had holes in. But my mum and dad, when they went to the bar every night, didn't have holes in their socks and shoes. That was a huge trauma. Not only cold, made my feet horrible. It was embarrassing at school. That was a trauma. That's why I have 70-something pair of sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put them two together on your own. Well, why is that affect? No. So I had to go back and clear that up.
Mm-hmm.
Never bought sneakers since. It's phenomenal.
It is beautiful. It is phenomenal. We're going to take a break real quick and switch over, and then we'll get back to it. I'd like to talk more about how the next step, what would someone want to do if they're listening to this right now or hearing this. I'd like to go on and we'll come back about some of the steps that they could take and resources they could get into to make their next step and challenge. So we'll be right back, and give me 1 second. Let's see.